This story is titled, I Paid for My Sister's Lavish Wedding, only for her to call me a loser at dinner. Now, after I cut her off financially, she started begging for forgiveness because she cannot afford it by herself. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey everyone, I don't usually post here, but this has been weighing on me for a while now. I need to get it off my chest because, honestly, I'm starting to feel like the biggest idiot in the world. If you've ever wondered what it's like to be treated like an endless bank account by your own family, stick around. So here's the deal. I'm 30, male, years old, single, no kids, just a regular guy with a regular life. My younger sister Sarah, 26 female, is the opposite. She's all about the big dreams, the perfect life, the fairy tale ending. She got engaged last year to this guy Ryan, 28 male. Cool guy, I thought at the time, though I didn't know him that well. Ryan's the kind of guy who always has some big idea that's going to change everything, except it never does. He bounces between jobs and spends what little he earns on gadgets, hobbies, and nights out instead of covering the basics. Sarah once laughed it off, saying, "That's just Ryan being Ryan, but to me, it just sounds reckless." And honestly, he doesn't seem to have a problem with me footing the bill whenever they're in a pinch. If anything, it feels like he's counting on it. Sarah has always been the golden child of our family. Growing up, she could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. If she wanted something, they'd bend over backward to get it for her, whether it was a last-minute party, a new gadget, or even covering her tuition when she blew through her savings. Me? I was the responsible one, the one who never asked for help, never needed much, and always picked up the slack. It's been that way for as long as I can remember. When Sarah announced her engagement, my parents acted like it was the best thing to ever happen to our family. I was surely happy for her, but the way they went on about it, you'd think she'd solved world hunger or something. Then came the wedding planning. It started off innocent enough. My mom called me one evening. "Hey honey," she started. "I was just talking to Sarah about her big day, and she thought it'd be nice to chat with you." I figured it was just wedding talk. Maybe she wanted advice about venues or colors, or knowing Sarah, just someone to gush to about how perfect everything was going to be. So I said, "Sure, tell her to call me." But then my mom hesitated. "Well, actually, we thought it'd be better to talk now, together," she said. That was my first red flag. My mom's not one to beat around the bush unless there's something she knows I won't like. I asked her what's going on. "Well," she began, "you know how much this wedding means to Sarah. She's been dreaming about it forever, and she really wants it to be special." "Of course," I said. "That's great. I'm happy for her." There was a pause. "She's got so many ideas," my mom continued, clearly stalling. "She's thinking about a live band, custom invitations, maybe even a little surprise for Ryan during the ceremony. She's really putting her heart into it." Then she finally said it. "But, you know," my mom added, her tone shifting slightly, "weddings are expensive. She's doing her best, but there's only so much she can manage on her own. And, well, we're a little tight right now, too." I figured this wasn't about advice or gushing. This was about money. "So, what are you saying?" I asked, though I already knew. "Well, Sarah was hoping you might be able to help out a little." "Help out how?" I pressed. She said vaguely, "Just with a few things here and there, like the venue deposit or maybe part of the catering. Nothing too big." Aha! This wasn't helping out in the sense of lending a hand with decorations or offering to pick up guests from the airport. This was financial help, the kind that wasn't going to be a little anything. "She really needs you," my mom added, "and you've always been so responsible. We knew we could count on you to make her dream come true." It wasn't a compliment. It was a warning. I was expected to handle everything because I didn't have a family of my own to tie me down. That phrase made my blood boil every time. I didn't say anything for a minute, partly because I didn't know how to respond, and partly because I was already calculating how much this was going to cost me. "I'll think about it," I finally said, trying not to commit to anything. "Great," my mom said quickly, like she'd just closed a deal. "I'll let Sarah know you're on board. This is going to mean so much to her." At first, it didn't sound so bad. "The venue deposit," my mom said. "It's just a little something to get things rolling. You're so good with money, and you've been working so hard. We knew we could count on you." I didn't want to make it awkward, so I said yes. I thought, all right, this is my sister's wedding. It's one day, I can help. But here's the thing about saying yes. Once you start, it doesn't stop. First, it was the deposit, then it was the caterer, then the flowers, the photographer, the live band, and even the dress. I'm not exaggerating when I say her dress cost more than my car. I wanted to say no, but it was too late. Family supports family, my mom would chime in every single time. This is such a big moment for her. Don't you want her to have the wedding she's always dreamed of? By the end of it, I'd spent $50,000. Yeah, 50 grand. I drained my savings, maxed out a credit card, and picked up extra shifts at work to make it happen. All for one day. Every time I wrote another check, I told myself it was for Sarah's happiness. But with each payment, I felt a piece of myself slipping away. Was this what family was supposed to feel like? Sacrificing everything while they took it all for granted? A week before the wedding, Sarah called me in a panic. The band we wanted just raised their rates, she said, her voice frantic. I know you've already helped so much, but could you cover the difference? It's only $2,000, and I'll pay you back. Well, she never did. But by then, I was too far in to back out. I told myself it was just one last thing. What's another $2,000 after $48,000? But deep down, I knew the money was never coming back. However, the wedding itself, it was beautiful, and Sarah looked like a princess. Everyone had a great time. Everyone except me. As I arrived at the venue, my mom cornered me immediately. Make sure you're around to help with the kids during the reception, she said, as if I wasn't already doing enough. It hit me then. I wasn't just a guest at this wedding. I was the unpaid staff. And as I sat at the table in the back, watching everyone else have fun, I wondered why I'd ever agreed to any of it in the first place. After the wedding, I thought I could finally breathe again. I figured Sarah and Ryan would settle into their new life, and I could start focusing on rebuilding my savings. I mean, I'd already done my part, right? Wrong. The first sign that things weren't over came about a month later when Sarah called me. Hey, big brother, she said. I hate to ask, but we're running a little tight this month. Could you help us out with rent? I froze. What do you mean you're running tight? Didn't you just get a bunch of money from the wedding gifts? Oh, well, yeah, she said, laughing like it was no big deal. But we used most of that for the honeymoon. And, other stuff. I wanted to say no right then and there, but I hesitated. Sarah sounded so casual about it, like it was just something brothers did. And once again, she pulled out the "You're my big brother" card. So I caved. I sent her enough to cover her rent for that month, convincing myself it was just a one-time thing. It wasn't. The requests kept coming. Rent one month, utility bills the next. At one point, she asked me to cover a car payment because Ryan had a slow week at work. Every time I started to push back, she'd get upset. You're acting like this is a big deal, she'd say. You know we're good for it. But they weren't. I never saw a penny of that money again. The worst part was that Sarah didn't even seem grateful. I'd see her on social media, posting pictures of fancy dinners, weekend trips, and new outfits. Meanwhile, I was eating ramen noodles and working double shifts just to keep my head above water. I tried to justify it to myself. This is temporary, I thought. She's my sister. She'll figure things out eventually. But deep down, I was starting to feel like an ATM. Then came the family dinner, the one that changed everything. Family dinners were supposed to be casual, a chance to eat some good food, catch up, and laugh a little. But this one, it was anything but. I don't know why I even went. My parents had been on my case about coming, saying stuff like, "It's been too long since we all sat down together, and Sarah and Ryan will be there. Won't it be nice to catch up?" I wasn't thrilled. I'd been avoiding family stuff for a while, trying to dodge the endless guilt trips and money requests. But eventually, I gave in. I told myself, how bad could it be? When I walked into my parents' house, the atmosphere wasn't warm or welcoming. It felt weirdly tense. Sarah and Ryan were already sitting at the dining table, looking way too comfortable, like they owned the place. "Hey, big spender," Sarah said as soon as she saw me. And I swear, I felt my blood pressure spike. "Sarah," I said, forcing a smile. "Ryan." I sat down, trying to keep my cool. The small talk started, mostly my mom and Sarah chatting about random stuff. Her hair appointment, Ryan's new shoes, the weather. I just sat there. "So," my dad said, finally looking at me. "How's work been?" "Busy," I said. It was the truth, but I didn't feel like elaborating. "Yeah," Sarah added, smirking. "I don't know how you do it. All those hours, all that stress. I'd be exhausted." Ryan chuckled. "Seriously, dude, you're like a machine. Always working, never stopping. Makes me tired just thinking about it." I clenched my jaw. I could feel my nerves fraying, but I told myself to let it go. It wasn't worth it. Halfway through dinner, Sarah casually dropped a bomb. "So, Ryan and I have been thinking about buying a house." My parents' faces lit up. "Oh, that's wonderful," my mom said. "A house. That's such a big step." "Yeah," Sarah said. "We've been looking at a few places, but, houses aren't cheap. We'll definitely need some help with the down payment." She said it so casually, like it was no big deal. I didn't say anything at first, just nodded, waiting to see if she'd elaborate. But, of course, she didn't. She just looked at me expectantly, like I should know what she meant. My mom chimed in. It's such a great time to buy a house, though. Interest rates aren't terrible, and they've found this cute little place they love. I still didn't bite. I just kept quiet, pretending to focus on my plate. But they kept going. Sarah leaned in, a little impatient now. We're just so close to making it work, you know? We've been saving, but with Ryano I should start connecting the dots. You've always been so Sue's job and everything. We've hit a bit of a wall. My mom nodded, giving me that support of Sarah. This would really mean so much to her. Finally, I sighed and looked up at them. I just spent $50,000 on your wedding, I said, staring directly at Sarah. Don't you think it's time you figured things out on your own? Sarah's smile disappeared. Wow, way to ruin the mood, she said. Seriously, Ryan added, shaking his head. It's not like we're asking for millions. We thought you'd be happy to help. She leaned back in her chair, looking like she'd just won a prize. I mean, it's not like you have kids or anything. You don't really have responsibilities like the rest of us. The way she said it, so casual and dismissive, made my blood boil. My entire life had been one responsibility after another. But to her, I was just the guy with no real problems who could be her backup plan. You think I don't have responsibilities? I said, barely keeping my voice steady. Who do you think has been paying for all of yours? That's when Sarah dropped the dagger. Maybe if you weren't such a loser, you wouldn't be so bitter about helping family. Loser? All these years, I'd bent over backward for this family, and now she was sitting there, calling me a loser like everything I'd sacrificed didn't matter. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, as I stared at her smug expression. I wanted to turn the house upside down, to lash out, but for a second all I could do was sit there, frozen by the sheer audacity of it all. Was this really how they saw me? I glanced at my parents, searching for some sign of outrage or even discomfort, but my mom just sipped her water, her eyes fixed on the table like she hadn't heard a thing. My dad ignored everything, completely disengaged. Their silence was deafening, an unspoken agreement with Sarah's words. They weren't just ignoring her, they were endorsing her. My hands clenched into fists under the table. I couldn't stay silent. A loser, huh? Funny coming from someone who's been riding my sacrifices like a free carnival ride for years. You think it's easy being treated like the family piggy bank while you sit back and judge? You know what? Yes, I'm such a loser. Now it's time you figure out your own damn life. Without one. Let's see how far you get. Sarah's smirk faltered, just a flicker, but I caught it. The silence that followed wasn't just awkward. You're being dramatic, my mom finally said. We're family. We help each other. I felt something snap inside me. Help each other, I said, standing up. All I've ever done is help. I've drained my savings, maxed out my credit cards, and worked myself to exhaustion for you. And now you want more? I'm done. I'm not your bank account. Figure it out yourselves. Sarah looked stunned for a moment. Wow, you're really going to act like this? After everything I've been through? You're so selfish. Ryan added, that's so messed up, man. Why are you so angry? We're not asking for much, just a little help. I shot back. You're sitting there in your $300 sneakers, eating food I paid for, and you want to lecture me about messed up? 50 grand wasn't much? Covering your rent, your bills, your entire life? It's not enough? What more do you want? My soul? My mom looked like she wanted to say something, but she didn't. My dad just stared at his plate. I'm done, I said again, throwing my napkin onto the table and grabbing my coat. Don't call me. Don't text me. And definitely don't ask me for money to pay your shit, I said, my voice cold. I didn't wait for a response. The door slammed shut behind me, cutting off their stunned silence. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. With that, I walked out, leaving them to sit in the mess they'd created. I drove home that night in silence, gripping the steering wheel so hard. I wasn't angry anymore. I was hurt. Hurt that my own family, the people who were supposed to have my back, saw me as nothing more than a wallet. And the next morning, my phone blew up. Sarah had sent me a series of texts ranging from passive-aggressive to outright insulting. Thanks for ruining dinner, by the way. You're seriously going to leave your own sister hanging? Wow, you're such a bitter, selfish person. No wonder you're alone. I didn't reply. I wasn't going to engage in her pity party or her insults. Then my mom called. I let it go to voicemail, but the notification popped up almost immediately. Honey, it's Mom. We need to talk. I don't know what's gotten into you, but you need to apologize to Sarah. She's been so upset since last night. Right. Of course I was the one who needed to apologize. The next voicemail was from my dad. You went too far? That was uncalled for. Sarah's been through a lot and you just walked out like that. You're better than this. Better than what exactly? I didn't call him back either. Sarah didn't stop. A GoFundMe link. Yep, Sarah had started a crowdfunding campaign for her down payment. The title, Help Us Build Our Future. The description, a sob story about how unexpected circumstances had left them in need. She didn't name me directly, but anyone who knew our family could read between the lines. She raised a grand total of $75. I won't lie, I laughed harder than I had in weeks. I wanted to send her a message saying, maybe try being a decent person. It's free. But I figured it wasn't worth the energy. But things got even worse when I got a call from Sarah's landlord. Apparently, she'd stopped paying her rent and told him I'd cover it. She said you've always handled her bills, he said. She lied, I told him flatly. She's not my problem anymore. He didn't seem surprised. I guess even her landlord knew she was full of it. Then, because Sarah can never just let something go, she showed up at my apartment. She must have buzzed my doorbell 10 times before I finally answered. I asked what she want, already exhausted. She looked upset. The whole dramatic act. You can't just cut me off, she said. I'm your sister. Yes, I can, I replied. Her expression shifted from desperation to anger. How am I supposed to pay rent, or buy groceries, or figure it out, I interrupted. Get a job, make a budget, do what the rest of us do. I have a job, she snapped. Then maybe stop spending all your money on designer clothes and takeout, I shot back. You're not my responsibility, Sarah. I've done more than enough. You're being cruel, she said, tears starting to form. No, I said firmly. I'm being honest. You've taken advantage of me for years. I'm done. I shut the door before she could say anything else. I wasn't about to let her guilt trip me again. A few days later, I got a call from an unknown number. I didn't answer, but then I got a notification. I'd been served. Turns out, Sarah was suing me. Sarah had a knack for getting her way. If you hesitated, she'd either guilt you or twist the story to make you the bad guy. Like the time she convinced my cousin to skip a family trip because her kids would be too disruptive, only to turn around and call her selfish for not attending. I didn't see it then, but looking back, I should have known. If Sarah wanted something, she'd find a way to make you give it to her. I should have seen the lawsuit coming. Sarah's claim was ridiculous. She accused me of making a verbal agreement to support her financially and said I'd caused her emotional distress by cutting her off. She even had fake screenshots of text messages where I supposedly promised to pay her bills. I couldn't believe it. My own sister was dragging me to court because I wouldn't bankroll her life anymore. My parents, of course, were on her side. My mom called to say, this wouldn't have happened if you just worked things out with her. My dad added, she's desperate, and you're making it worse by being stubborn. Stubborn? I shot back. She's suing me because I won't give her money. How is that okay? Just settle, my mom said. It'll make things easier for everyone. No, I said. I'm not giving her a dime. So I hired a lawyer and we prepared to fight. The case was a circus. Sarah played the victim perfectly, telling the judge how she'd relied on my promises and how my betrayal had left her struggling. But my lawyer tore her case apart. We presented receipts for every expense I'd covered, from the venue deposit to her dress. We showed how much money I'd already spent on her wedding, rent, and bills. And when Sarah's fake screenshots came up, my lawyer pointed out the inconsistencies. The judge wasn't impressed with her lies. He dismissed the case, and Sarah was slapped with a fine for wasting the court's time. Afterward, my parents tried to guilt me again. My mom said, you didn't have to take it that far. She's your sister. She sued me, I replied. What did you expect me to do? Roll over and hand her more money? They didn't have an answer. Here where I am right now, I don't know what to expect, but things are not settling down yet, and I'm already exhausted with everything going on. I'll keep you guys updated. Update 1. Hey guys, here's an update. So after the lawsuit, I thought things might finally settle down. Sarah had embarrassed herself in court, my parents were out of excuses, and I was ready to move on. But if you've been keeping up, you already know my family doesn't work like that. Sarah, of course, wasn't content to leave things alone either. She started posting even more on social media, painting herself as the victim of a heartless sibling. She didn't name me outright, but the posts were painfully obvious. And her friends, who clearly didn't know the full story, flooded the comments with sympathy. You deserve so much better, one wrote. Another added, some people just don't have a heart, but the worst was yet to come. The other day I got a call from my aunt, who I hadn't spoken to in months. So, she said, her voice hesitant, I heard you're refusing to help Sarah anymore. What's going on? I sighed. What did she tell you? That you abandoned her after the wedding, my aunt replied. She said you promised to support her, and then just stopped. I couldn't believe it. Sarah wasn't just playing the victim. She was rewriting history. That's not what happened, I explained, walking my aunt through everything. The wedding, the rent, the bills, the lawsuit. By the end, she was quiet. I had no idea, she finally said. She made it sound like you just walked away for no reason. Yeah, well, that's her version, I said. I'm done explaining myself, though. If people want to believe her lies, that's on them. The breaking point came a few months later when my parents called me. Together, which was rare. We need to talk, my mom said. About what? I asked, already dreading the answer. It's Sarah, my dad said. She's in trouble again. Of course she is, I muttered. What now? She maxed out our credit cards, my mom blurted out. We didn't know until the bills came. We can't make the payments, and the interest is piling up. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Why would you give her access to your credit cards? She said it was just for groceries and gas, my dad said, sounding more defeated than angry. We didn't think she'd... You didn't think? I interrupted. After everything she's done, you didn't think she'd take advantage of you? Are you serious? She's our daughter, my mom said, her tone defensive. And I'm your son, I shot back. But that hasn't stopped you from treating me like nothing more than a paycheck. My mom sounded like she was on the verge of tears. We just thought, maybe you could help us out, just this once. We're drowning here. And Sarah, she's not in a good place. No, I said, my voice firm. This is your mess. You enabled her. You let her walk all over you, and now you're dealing with the consequences. I'm not bailing you out. Please, my dad said. We'll pay you back. I cut him off. Number, I'm done. Don't call me again unless it's to apologize. I blocked Sarah on everything. Social media, my phone, email. I stopped answering my parents' calls. I even told a few close friends to stop updating me on the family drama. I am done. I feel like I'm going to cut them all off and be relieved from all this crap. I'll keep you updated. Icarus final update. Hey again. I came back with another update since y'all asked for it. After that phone call with my parents, I knew it was over. Whatever thread was holding our family together had officially snapped. I'd spent years bending over backward for Sarah, and for what? More entitlement, more guilt trips, more people telling me I wasn't doing enough. I blocked their numbers and made the conscious decision to move on. At first, it felt weird. Cutting off your family isn't something most people plan for. I had this nagging voice in my head saying, what if they're right? What if I am the selfish one? But then I'd remember everything I'd done for them. All the times I said yes when I wanted to say no. All the sacrifices I made while Sarah kept living like money grew on trees. And that voice? It got quieter. But Sarah? She wasn't ready to let go. About 2 weeks after I cut ties, I got an email from a mutual friend. Let's call her Emily. Emily said she'd been at a family gathering, not mine, thankfully, where Sarah was holding court, telling everyone about how I'd abandoned her. She's really laying it on thick, Emily wrote. She told everyone you promised to help with her rent, her bills, even a house down payment, and then just ghosted her. I rolled my eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. Of course Sarah was spinning the story. She couldn't admit the truth, that she'd bled me dry and I finally had enough. Emily also mentioned that Sarah had been calling extended family members, asking for money. She's desperate, Emily said. I think she thought the lawsuit would scare you into caving. Well, it didn't. And then finally came the cherry on top. A few weeks later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hi, the voice said hesitantly. It was Sarah. What do you want? I asked. She sniffed, like she'd been crying. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I paused. This was unexpected. Go on, I said. She took a deep breath. I know I've been difficult, and I know I've asked for a lot, but I'm really struggling, and I don't know what to do. I sighed. Sarah, I've been telling you for years that you need to figure things out for yourself. You can't keep relying on other people to bail you out. I know, she said quickly. I know, but I'm trying. It's just hard. I could hear the manipulation creeping back into her voice. The apology wasn't real. It was just a new tactic to get me to cave. I'm sorry you're struggling, I said, my tone firm. But I'm not going to fix this for you. You've made your choices. Now you have to live with them. She didn't like that answer. You're being so cold, she snapped. How can you just turn your back on me like this? Because I've spent my whole life cleaning up your messes, I replied. And I'm done. Goodbye, Sarah. I hung up. That was the last time I spoke to her. Now it's been months since I cut ties with Sarah and my parents, and honestly, it's been the most peaceful time of my life. No guilt trips, no frantic calls for money. I've started rebuilding my savings, and for the first time, I'm thinking about what I want for my future. Sarah, from what I've heard through the grapevine, is still living with my parents. She's burned through their savings and maxed out every option they gave her. They're struggling, but I can't say I feel sorry for them. They created this mess by enabling her for so long. As for me, I've finally bought my own house. It's small, nothing fancy, but it's mine. No one can take it from me, and no one can guilt me into sacrificing it for their need. I've learned something important after all of this. Family isn't about DNA. It's about mutual respect, love, and boundaries. If those aren't there, then you're just enabling toxicity. I may have lost my family, but I've gained something far more valuable: peace. They weren't invited to the housewarming, and they probably never will be. And you know what? I'm okay with that. Here's to moving forward.